A man is standing at the north gate of the White House with a loaded Colt .45 pistol hidden inside his boot. He is wearing a purple velvet suit, a heavy cape draped over his shoulders, and large gold-rimmed sunglasses in the pitch-black darkness of the early morning. He looks like a villain from a comic book. He hands a crumpled letter to the guard and demands to see the President of the United States immediately. Under any other circumstance, the Secret Service would have tackled him to the ground. Snipers on the roof would have taken the shot. But nobody pulls the trigger. The guards are frozen. They lower their weapons. Because as the man steps into the dim light, they see the massive gold medallions around his neck. They see the jet-black hair perfectly slicked back, and they recognize the most famous sideburns in human history. The armed man at the gate wasn't an assassin. It was Elvis Presley. And he isn't there to perform. He is high on a cocktail of prescription drugs. He is carrying a weapon, and he is on a mission to become a federal agent to save America from hippies and the Beatles. This is the true story of the most bizarre cover-up in White House history, Operation King. To understand how we got to this insane moment, we have to rewind the clock. We have to go back to Memphis, Tennessee, Graceland, the kingdom. But inside the gold-plated walls, the king was losing his mind. Elvis Presley was angry. He was paranoid. For the first time in his life, he felt his power slipping away. He had just gotten into a screaming match with his father, Vernon, and his wife, Priscilla. They told him he was spending too much money. They told him he was out of control. Elvis didn't handle criticism well. He stormed into his bedroom, his mind racing. He stared at the television screen, watching reports about the anti-war protests and the drug culture sweeping the nation. In his hazy, sleep-deprived state, he connected dots that didn't exist. He convinced himself that America was under attack and he was the only superhero who could save it. He decided he didn't need a manager anymore. He didn't need bodyguards. He needed to escape. Without telling a soul, Elvis grabbed his checkbook, a handful of pills, and his obsession, a collection of police badges. He drove himself to the airport. This was unprecedented. Elvis Presley never went anywhere alone. He was a man who hadn't packed his own suitcase in 15 years. But that morning, he was a ghost. He boarded an American Airlines commercial flight. He sat in first class, surrounded by businessmen who couldn't believe their eyes. Imagine looking across the aisle and seeing the king of rock and roll, alone, drinking Dr. Pepper and frantically scribbling on a piece of stationery. He wasn't writing lyrics, he was writing a manifesto. He was writing a desperate, rambling letter that would confuse the most powerful man in the free world. Elvis had a plan. He wanted a federal badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. He believed that if he had this specific badge, he could legally carry guns anywhere in the country. And maybe, just maybe, he could arrest the Beatles for being anti-American. The plane began its descent into Washington. The stage was set for the clash of two different worlds. While the plane cruised at 30,000 feet, Elvis Presley was vibrating with nervous energy. He couldn't sit still. To the other passengers in first class, he looked like a rock star going on vacation. But inside his head, he was a soldier preparing for war. By sheer coincidence, or perhaps fate. The man sitting across the aisle from him was George Murphy, a Republican senator from California. Elvis didn't see a politician, he saw an opportunity. He leaned over, his eyes wide and intense, and began to explain his theory. He told the senator that America was crumbling. He said the Beatles were earning American money but corrupting American youth with their anti-establishment spirit. He spoke with the conviction of a preacher, telling the senator that he, Elvis Presley, was the only one who could reach the kids, because the kids didn't listen to politicians in suits, they listened to the king. Senator Murphy nodded politely, likely bewildered by the surreal experience of receiving a political briefing from a man wearing a velvet cape and enough gold jewelry to sink a small boat. But Elvis took the senator's polite nods as a green light. He was convinced. The government needed him. Elvis grabbed a stack of American Airlines stationery and a pen. His hand moved furiously across the page. His handwriting was erratic, slanting in different directions, a physical manifestation of his chaotic mind. He began to write a letter to Richard Nixon. It remains one of the most fascinating documents in the National Archives. In it, Elvis didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for a pardon. He introduced himself as a humble admirer. He wrote, "I have done an in-depth study of drug abuse and communist brainwashing techniques, and I am right in the middle of the whole thing." The irony is tragedy in its purest form. The man writing these words, claiming to be an expert on the dangers of drug abuse, had a bloodstream filled with sleeping pills and amphetamines at that very moment. He was offering to help the president fight a war that he was personally losing every single day. But Elvis wasn't thinking about the irony. He was thinking about the prize. He wrote that he wanted to be of service to the country, but he had one specific condition. He wanted a federal badge. Specifically, a badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. To Elvis, this badge was the ultimate talisman. In his mind, it wasn't just a symbol of authority. He believed that with a federal narcotics badge, he would be legally allowed to carry his guns onto any airplane, into any hotel, and perhaps even into foreign countries. He wanted the badge so he could carry more weapons. It was a child's fantasy wrapped in a federal request. He signed the letter, "With great respect, Elvis Presley." He also added a postscript mentioning that he would be staying at the Washington Hotel under the alias John Burroughs. He even included his private phone numbers, expecting the President of the United States to just call him up for a chat. The plane landed in Washington, D.C. The sun hadn't risen yet. Elvis gathered his cape, his gold cane, and his letter. He didn't check into his hotel immediately. He didn't call a taxi. He hired a limousine and gave the driver a destination that sounded like a joke. "Take me to the White House." He was going to knock on the front door of the most heavily guarded building on Earth with no appointment, carrying a handgun, and demand to see the leader of the free world. The mission had officially begun. When the limousine pulled up to the northwest gate, the sun was finally beginning to break through the gray winter clouds. Elvis stepped out, his purple cape fluttering in the wind. He walked up to the uniformed Secret Service officers with the confidence of a man who owned the world. He handed them the handwritten letter on American Airlines stationery and simply said, "Give this to the president." Then he turned around, got back in his limo, and drove off to his hotel to wait for a call. He left the guard standing there, holding a piece of paper that looked like it was written by a child, but signed by a king. They didn't throw it away. You don't throw away a note from Elvis. The letter moved up the chain of command faster than a national security briefing. Within hours, the letter landed on the desk of Eagle Bud Krogh, one of President Nixon's top aides. Krogh stared at the paper. He read the erratic handwriting, the demands for a badge, the offers to help fight the hippies. His first thought was that this was a prank. His second thought was that Elvis had lost his mind. But then a different thought occurred to him. Richard Nixon was not popular with the youth. The country was divided by Vietnam and civil unrest. The White House desperately needed something to make the president look relevant, perhaps even cool to the younger generation. Krogh realized that a photo op with Elvis Presley could be the greatest PR stunt of the year. He convinced the president's chief of staff, and eventually they convinced a reluctant Richard Nixon. The meeting was set at 12:30 p.m. that same day. Elvis received the call at his hotel. He didn't seem surprised. In his mind, this was just one powerful leader meeting another. He got dressed, ensuring his gold belt buckle was polished and his sunglasses were spotless. But there was one detail he forgot, or perhaps chose to ignore. He returned to the White House, this time invited inside. He walked through the diplomatic reception room, flanked by his two bodyguards, Jerry Schilling and Sonny West. But as they approached the inner sanctum of the Oval Office, the Secret Service stopped them. The head agent looked at Elvis, specifically at the bulge in his velvet boot. He asked the question that no one ever dared to ask the king. "Mr. Presley, are you carrying any weapons?" Elvis paused. He looked at the agent, then reached down into his boot and pulled out the shiny, chrome-plated Colt .45 pistol. He held it out, handle first. Then he reached behind his back and pulled out a small Derringer pistol. Then he motioned to his bodyguards, who also produced weapons. The Secret Service agents were stunned. They were currently standing inside the most secure building on the planet, and a rock star had just walked through the front door carrying an arsenal. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. Elvis was there to ask for a badge that would let him carry guns anywhere, yet he had to be disarmed just to enter the room to ask for it. The agents confiscated the weapons, tagging them as evidence. Elvis didn't mind. He told them they could hold on to them for now. He was focused. He adjusted his collar, checked his reflection in a mirror, and prepared to meet the president. He was carrying a gift for Nixon. Not a record, not a guitar. He had brought a commemorative World War II Colt .45 pistol encased in a wooden box. He intended to give a gun to the President of the United States. The doors to the Oval Office opened. Inside, Richard Nixon, stiff and awkward in his gray suit, was waiting. Elvis Presley, in his purple velvet and gold chains, strode in. Two universes were about to collide. The moment Elvis Presley walked into the Oval Office, the air in the room changed. Richard Nixon, a man known for his rigid demeanor and conservative suits, looked visibly confused as he shook the hand of the man standing before him. Elvis was wearing a purple velvet tunic, a cape, and a belt buckle the size of a dinner plate. The official White House photographer snapped the picture. Flashbulbs popped. In that split second, they captured the most requested image in the history of the National Archives. But the photo doesn't tell you what happened next. Elvis didn't sit down immediately. He was wired. He started showing off his outfit to the president. He pointed to his velvet pants and said, "Mr. President, you have your show and I have mine. This is just my costume." Nixon nodded awkwardly, looking at the gold chains around Elvis's neck, and replied, "Well, you dress kind of a little wild, don't you?" Then the conversation took a dark turn. Elvis sat down and launched into his pitch. He looked Nixon in the eye and told him that the Beatles, the same band that had revolutionized music, were a force for anti-American spirit. He claimed they came to America, made their money, and then went back to England to promote anti-war propaganda. The irony in the room was suffocating. Here was Elvis Presley, the original rebel of the 1950s, the man who had terrified parents with his hips, now sitting in the White House snitching on the Beatles for being too rebellious. Nixon, who hated the counterculture movement, suddenly found himself agreeing with the king of rock and roll. But Elvis was getting impatient. He hadn't come here to talk politics. He had come for the prize. Suddenly, he leaned in. His voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and desperate. "Mr. President, can I get a badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs?" Nixon blinked. He wasn't prepared for this. He looked over at his aide, Bud Krogh, with a look of desperation. "Bud," Nixon asked, "can we get him a badge?" Krogh knew this wasn't standard protocol. You don't just hand out federal law enforcement credentials to civilians, let alone rock stars with a known prescription drug habit. But Krogh looked at the president, then at Elvis, and realized that saying no wasn't an option. "Yes, Mr. President," Krogh said, "we can do that." Elvis exploded with joy. In a breach of all royal and presidential protocol, he didn't just say thank you. He stood up, walked around the desk, and wrapped his arms around Richard Nixon in a massive bear hug. The President of the United States stood there frozen, stiff as a board, being hugged by a man in a velvet cape. Elvis had done it. He had charmed, confused, and manipulated his way to the highest office in the land. But the meeting wasn't over. Elvis remembered he had brought gifts. He pulled out the World War II Colt .45 pistol from its case and presented it to Nixon. The Secret Service agents in the corner tensed up, ready to pounce, but Nixon just smiled. He accepted the gun. It was a surreal victory. Elvis walked out of the Oval Office that day believing he was now a top-secret federal agent. He believed he had the power to save America. But as he walked back to his limousine, badge in hand, the tragedy was already unfolding. The badge wouldn't save him. In fact, it would become just another enabler for the demons that were already chasing him. A few days after the meeting, the item arrived. It was official. Elvis Presley was now an honorary federal agent for the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. For Elvis, this was the ultimate victory. He carried that badge everywhere. He slept with it next to his bed. He showed it to his friends, his family, and total strangers. He truly believed he had been deputized by the president to fight the war on drugs. But history is filled with cruel ironies, and this is perhaps the cruelest of them all. Elvis didn't use the badge to arrest drug dealers. He didn't use it to stop the flow of narcotics into American cities. Instead, he used it as a shield. With that federal badge in his pocket, he could bypass airport security checks. He could carry his growing collection of firearms onto planes without question. And most tragically, he could travel with his own private supply of prescription pills, untouched and uninspected by law enforcement. The very object he sought to fight the drug culture became the tool that protected his own addiction. 7 years later, on August 16, 1977, the king was found dead on his bathroom floor. The toxicology report found 14 different drugs in his system: codeine, morphine, Valium, ethnomatum, a chemical cocktail that stopped his heart at the age of 42. The badge didn't save him. In a way, it only helped him hide the truth for a little longer. Today, if you visit the National Archives in Washington, D.C., you won't see long lines of people waiting to read the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. The most requested, most viewed, and most purchased reproduction in the entire archive is the photograph of Richard Nixon shaking hands with Elvis Presley. People look at that photo and they smile. They see a funny clash of cultures. They see the velvet suit and the stiff president. It looks like a comedy sketch. But now you know the truth. You know what was happening behind those sunglasses. You know about the paranoia, the desperation, and the loaded gun hidden in the boot. That photograph isn't a comedy. It's a tragedy captured in a single frame. It's the portrait of a man who conquered the world but couldn't conquer his own demons. A man who looked for salvation in a badge when he really needed help. This was Operation King, the day the music died, long before the music actually stopped.